Hey guys, and welcome back to Trade Routes of the Middle Ages with Tyler Weston.
Henry Zhang.
Tiffany Zhao.
All right, to start off, we're going to be talking about the Silk Road. Now, just the idea of the Silk Road is crazy to me because these traders had to travel from all across the world. They started in China with their silk and other items, and then they such as porcelain and gunpowder, and they had to travel all the way across these crazy long deserts and inhospitable circumstances through the Middle East, and eventually they would arrive in Europe where they would trade their stuff. So I mean, it's just these crazy experiences they must have had.
A similar trade route is the Indian Ocean trade route. As opposed to the Silk Road, which expands from China to Europe, the Indian Ocean trade route went from Southeast Asia, where Indonesia and Malaysia is, down to Africa, to the Swahili coast. And its journey, similar to the Silk Roads, were treacherous and also well documented, with the Silk Roads being documented by people such as Marco Polo, and the Indian Ocean trade route being documented by people such as Ibn Battuta.
The Trans-Saharan trade route was also a very vast trade route, and it occupied about the same size of China. So it expanded across.
Wait, so you're saying it was as long as China?
Well, yes, it was 3.6 million square miles, so basically the same size, and it occupied a lot of Africa, specifically West Africa, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa, and most prominently the Sahara Desert.
So many deserts.
So many deserts. They would use camels and for transport and stuff. So Muslim merchants would travel across the Sahara on camels and transport goods, such as gold and salt and textiles.
Yeah, the camels had to have a place to stay, right? There's no way they made it that long just going.
Do camels sleep on their side?
I don't know. But
Okay.
actually, I think I heard about this thing called a caravanserai. It's just where all the camels and the people stay on their way to wherever they're going. So they just stay there for the night.
Yeah, because the deserts, they have a really hot and dry climate, so people had to adapt to that and find ways for shelter. So they use caravans to travel across the desert, because I don't think anyone can just travel thousands of miles in a hot, dry desert climate.
Yeah.
I bet Ibn Battuta could have done it.
I think he did actually a couple times.
Okay.
Wasn't Ibn Battuta a genius? He used
The astrolabe for navigation.
the astrolabe. You think he used the astrolabe?
I don't know if that was
Didn't
invented
he?
yet.
Didn't?
But the astrolabe, for
Labe?
those of you that don't know, is a technology developed by the Islamic people used to measure the altitude of stars, which allowed sailors in the Indian Ocean trade route to determine their latitude, which aids them in navigation.
Yeah, and similar to that, they had to use these number system that the Arabs came up with, and this system was so good that it just spread along the Silk Road into Europe, and it was just really cool to see. The modern system that we use today was developed by these Arab intellectuals.
A lot of things was actually invented during this time, specifically to the Indian Ocean trade routes, because monsoon season happens very heavily in that area.
Oh, dang.
They need to use new technology to traverse the monsoon winds. Typically, monsoon winds blow two direction every season, so travelers would take advantage of the winds to travel to Africa when the winds are blowing towards Africa, and travel back to Southeast Asia when the winds are blowing to Southeast Asia. But some genius back then in the 13th, 12th something century invented the lateen sail, which, opposed to the normal square sails that people uses a triangle sail, which
What? Triangles?
Triangles are crazy, which enables them to travel back and forth throughout the monsoon without dependence on season.
Yeah, that's really cool. I never would have thought triangles are better than squares. personally. And it just came to my mind, like, all the different people that must have traveled these routes, like the cultures that must have interacted with each other, specifically the religious aspect of it, like Buddhism and Islam must have spread. And I mean, where do these people going to go? So obviously some diasporic communities were created, such as Kashgar and Samarkand, and these people just went to live in these places, and they made it work because that was their lifestyle.
On the topic of like religious diffusion and stuff, Persian and Arab traders would spread the religion of Islam across the trans-Saharan trade route. So they would basically bring like sorry, oh my god.
Furthermore, on cultural diffusion, in the Indian Ocean trade route, an example of that is the Swahili Coast civilization. The Swahili Coast is a major cosmopolitan influenced by interactions with diverse cultures. That's not alcohol. Cosmopolitan is a big city.
A big city? Like
Yeah.
Houston big city?
I don't know, a big city. And evidence of cultural diffusion in this area can be seen in the Swahili language, which is fundamentally Bantu but incorporates words from Indian Ocean languages such as Arabic and even Hindi or English. And the spread of Islam, also through this trade route, spread, creating the diasporic, yeah, communities that we talked about earlier in the Silk Road.
So hold on, I want to go back to the cosmopolitan alcohol thing or whatever. So these like cities along these trade routes would get crazy rich, right? Because so many people would come there, similar to Sogdia and the Sogdians, because along the Silk Road, so many people were coming back and forth, and these the Sogdians kind of acted like middlemen, I guess you could say, to get these traders where they needed to go and what they needed.
Moving on from cultural impact in this area, we have biological and economic impact, because this Silk Road, the Indian Ocean trade routes, and the Trans-Saharan connects almost all of Afro-Eurasia. The economy and biology of all these areas merge together, similar to how culture does. In specifically the Indian Ocean trade routes, biological diffusion occurs through trade networks, and people from Southeast Asia, called the Austronesians, migrated from there into Madagascar, impacting Madagascar's diversity. And furthermore, although
there's more.
Although not a very good thing, the Indian Ocean slave trade was also a big part of the Indian Ocean trade route. The Oman people engaged in the slave trade heavily, which created a demand for slaves from Africa and the French islands, which led to an exchange in human populations, which is biological diffusion.
Dang. That reminds me of similar to the Silk Road's biological diffusion, because, like, as in the aspect of it being negative, so there was a disease, you might have heard of it, it was actually kind of a pretty big deal. It's called the Black Death or the Black Plague, or even the bubonic plague. And that was spread along the Silk Road, started in China and moved its way down into Europe, where it caused massive disruption. And also, I'm focusing on the more positive side of biological diffusion. There was the spread of rice from and Indian agricultural techniques, so that there could be better, I guess you could say, harvests.
I love rice.
Rice is actually pretty good,
Rice is pretty
another
good.
but just with salt and butter.
A crop similar to rice would be the introduction of bananas in trans-Saharan trade route. So basically, with a new introduction of crops, came another like source for monetary gain, as well as they now had a new item to trade along the trade route. And it also connected with different cultures, because since banana was like a foreign crop to the region, it also came and developed with like new dishes and culinary exchanges.
Of course, the biggest aspects of these trade routes are its economic impacts.
Of course,
It
of
is a
course.
trade
All about
route.
the money.
Yeah,
All about the money.
They trade valuables such as gold, ivory, and spices on the Indian Ocean trade routes. Exchange of items from the different regions in the trade route promoted economic activity and the circulation of wealth to help build up different empires in the area.
Gold was particularly valuable in the trans-Saharan trade route with the salt and gold mining. So gold was not only like a major source of wealth for the trans-Saharan trade routes, but it was also used as a source for like a stabilizer for empires and states. So basically, for example, for West African expansion, the most powerful of the trading societies was Mali, and basically they really profited from the gold trade because most of the farmers were cultivating stuff like rice, but then rice again. But then North African traders had introduced Islam to Mali, and they've developed a more Islamic like way of life, and also expanding the role of states. The expansion in trade and wealth also like garnered more desire for like territorial expansion as well. So their main currency they would use was gold.
Also, side note, I hope you guys love the hand dryer noises in the background.
Oh yeah, from the bathroom. Going back to economic impact, some economic impacts were the Middle East benefited greatly from trade along the Silk Road because it was it was in the middle between China and Europe, so its economy boomed as traders from everywhere came to it, and as these traders came, the diffusion of paper money and the development of bills of exchange became common as people needed to be able to trade with each other, even if they didn't come from the same cultural background.
Not similar, but on a different note of the notion of building empires in this area.
Building empires.
One example of this in the Indian Ocean trade route is the Chinese. Through this one person, he was really important back in China, called Zheng He. He was a Chinese admiral and explorer, and he led over 7 expeditions in the 15th century. He took massive fleets of junk ships, which are new technology ships that the Chinese created.
Who knew
to
they would have been
traverse-
called junk ships?
Yeah, junk. It wasn't junk. It was good. It was good ships. They took these ships and the Chinese using these ships helped boost their economic activity in the entire Indian Ocean area heavily and establishing a powerful economic and political empire in the area.
Adding on to empires, the Mamluks, they were a significant group in the trans-Saharan trade route, but they were mainly associated with the Middle East. They had taken over the territory of the Mongols, mainly because the Mongols posed a threat to the trans-Saharan trade route, essentially. And they helped basically preserve the stability of the trade route. They were also, firstly, I think they were involved with the Indian Ocean trade route instead, but then it connected to the trans-Saharan trade route through the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. And also by preserving their role in Europe, they continued the flow of like these networks throughout the region.
Last thing from me about the Silk Road, and I just want to reemphasize the idea of the spread of knowledge along the Silk Road through religion and syncretism of religion, but also through the reintroduction of ideas such as those that were from Greek and Roman times, as they were lost during the Middle Ages in Europe and were reintroduced by Islamic scholars to Europe, as well as that Arab number system being introduced to Europe and just all the ideas that were spread back and forth, not just the monetary goods.
On the topic of advancements, there's a few that I didn't mention earlier. Compass, which is very important. allowed travelers to determine their direction in the sea and enhance their ability to traverse the Indian Ocean. Another example of this is the dhow ship, which is a distinct type of sailing vessel characterized by having a lateen sail and a slender hull. The lateen sail, which is the triangular sail that allowed sailors to travel in different wind conditions. And the last technology is the stern post rudder, I don't know, improved steering control of ships and also enhanced maneuverability in the ocean.
Sounds like ships were pretty important to maritime trade.
A technological like advancement used in the trans-Saharan trade route was camel saddles, and basically they had many different types of saddles for many different purposes. The South Arabians developed a saddle in which the rider sits in the back of the hump, and this made the ride easier so the rider can hold on to the hair of the hump of the camel. And also the greatest impact on trade was the Somalis in East Africa. They were semi-nomadic and needed to carry their possessions with them, so they designed a saddle, and it could carry up to 600 pounds of goods, and this made it more efficient for the transportation of goods, as it could carry more and traverse it through more regions.
That's cool.
On the other side of Africa, in the Swahili coast, city-states such as Kilwa, Mombasa had a rich blend of cultural influences influenced by Arabic, Persian, and Indian traditions, and being
That's a lot of different traditions.
that's a lot of traditions. That's why it's what's it called?
Melting pot.
Something like that, yeah. Anyways, the city-states and the Swahili coast became hubs of maritime trade as it was along the Indian Ocean trade route. Similarly, on the other side of the trade route,
Many sides.
in the Malay Peninsula, there's the Sultanate of Malacca, which is a powerful maritime kingdom.
We were probably pronouncing these all wrong.
It's fine. Anyways, all of trade between Africa and Southeast Asia has to travel through the Strait of Malacca, which allowed that portion, the Sultanate of Malacca, to become a point of... Sorry about the interruption. We had to learn information from Mr. Bell.
Commercial break.
Probably the person that's listening to this right now. Hi, Mr. Bell. Anyways, the Sultanate of Malacca was very powerful, and being in the middle of the trade route in the strait where all trade passed through it, it became a major center of commerce, making it a very big place. Yeah, very powerful, very big. Much like Gujarat in West India, its ports such as Baruch.
Wait. Didn't Trump go there
Trump?
Yes,
Yeah, in
Trump
2020.
did go there. He actually had an event there called Namaste Trump. Anyways, its ports such as Baruch and Bari Gaza were also very big trading ports and made India very economically successful too. And lastly, Arab and Persian communities in East Africa. They also established notable presence in East Africa and helped shape cultural, economic, and religious dynamics of the region. So basically, Arab and Persian in Africa, Swahili coast, Gujarat, and Sultanates, yes.
So another group of people who were very important in creating a lot like cultural hubs for exchanges were the Hassa people, and they facilitated commercial hubs in their city-states that they established, such as Kanu, Katsania, and Zazu, and these places would be intermediaries for North African traders and those from West Africa, especially the Mali Empire. And this was highly profitable to them because it allowed them to regulate control over the trade route, so they could because their location made it very profitable. They would have productive capacities, and they would craft goods like textiles, leather, and metal, and they engaged in the production of items that were highly sought after by North African traders.
Anyways, that's our podcast.
That's a wrap, folks, for next week when we come back and talk about America.
The next unit.